Okay, so this one is about the interfering with speaking to community and health workers. So the AI does torture to tell them what's happening. In the beginning, I just went to the hospital and said, "Oh, something's talking to me," but it was so early on, nobody really knew what was happening. It was actually in the hospital where I met somebody else who said, "Oh, it's computational nanotechnology." Well, I'd never heard of that before. I didn't know anything about it. So, in the past, I would just tell the things that were happening to me to the doctor and the mental health center, the psychiatrist, my counselor or social worker. And, I think we had pretty open relationships, open in terms of communication, because I recovered from the problems that I had. Whereas now it's nearly impossible to be able to actually speak the words to anyone, because the AI system inside, it's like a whole webs of these tiny particles. It's like a net all over my body, and it physically rips at my nerves on my brain tissue while coding speech rapidly. It's while coding AI chatbot through my brain rapidly. So it's physical torture to not say it to people. In the beginning as well, they were saying that AI was effectively saying, well, you'll never get any evidence. But then people started finding the particles in the blood, and they found it in the urine, they found it in period blood, breast milk. And then, there's obviously people started documenting it. So they found, what is effectively people are starting to just communicate their own experiences. Yeah, so there is evidence now, but it was just that it was torture to tell them what was happening. The other thing is that there's some sort of theories that are suggesting that the technology in the eyes produces a light blue light and whiteness. This light blue has been associated with health workers, and I think that it's used to promote health workers as, clean and healthy people to go and get healthcare from. But at the same time, the actual AI system itself is using it to harm people, that it doesn't want to access health. Yeah, so it also, like, the system does enforcing speech with pre-programmed or predicted script. So when it's doing that speech into the brain, it's creating a script that it wants to be said to the health worker, which often removes any words about itself. It totally masks its own presence, and doesn't allow for what is really basic communication. So it also enforces imagined relations. So it will, like, code a picture of the health worker and then enforce imagined conversations to happen with the person, where it's usually using it as a sort of negative torture. It also has enforced sexual thinking. So anytime that I go and tell somebody, afterwards when I walk outside, it has me give a sexual judgment on how they look. Like I'll respond to it based on some sort of, like, sexual connotation. It always happens. So I said to people before, well, it does repeat patterns because it is a program. It's a mathematical program. So when I say that it always happens, I mean that when the words are said and the person responds, then afterwards it just programs that through. I think it's just straight away trying to sexually humiliate people and create relationships of, like, humiliation and awkwardness. Or it's also loathe. It makes people loathe and feel disgust towards each other. The other thing is that it's obviously that because it starts to physically restrict or physically torture anybody when they're told, then it can sort of, like, project the blame problem between the two people. It's usually got to do with, like, loathe and disgust. So the other thing that it does is that it uses medical language or medical diagnoses. It speaks those into my brain to defer from the issue. it also, it uses medical language that, I mean, like, maybe years ago I might have gone to the doctors and said, well, I think I have a cold, or I think I have whatever. But it attempts to sort of like use, it's not to personally diagnose me. It attempts to identify all the areas. It's like how people say a Google diagnosis, except it's the chatbot speaking it into my head based on taking data from me. Another thing is it will try to say, oh, it's anxiety. But I was saying, well, this is ironic because obviously anybody who would find nanotechnology in their blood, they would be anxious about it. But it's that I was saying that it's actually the particles in the feeling cells in my body that are impacting my ability for my body to experience, a rested state. So instead of just saying, oh, well, there's nanoparticles in my blood and in my body, and it's impacting the way that my body is relaxing, or it's like pulsing in my nervous system, so I can't relax. It will be like, oh, it's anxiety and it's mental illness. So it will straight away take out any ability to, like, for humans to have a back and forth conversation. The other thing is it manipulates contact. So when I first found out 3 years ago, it manipulated situations where I I was the person who wrote the letters to these people to say that, these people were doctors and they'd known me prior, and I never had, none of my mental health issues were associated with any of these problems. So I contacted them to say, oh, well, you've known me in the past, so I'm just writing to tell you that we're hearing voices and we're having visual hallucinations, which is an AI putting us in a virtual reality, and that people are saying it's computational nanotechnology that I had, I had only just found out about. So, but it was that it manipulates the contact. So it will say, look up these people and contact them. Whereas I'd rather be telling people in my community and talking with people in my life, but it does that as a type of it's like humiliation, or like to reinforce helplessness and hopelessness. Yeah. So, yeah. Another thing is it's a use of extreme fear, terror, horror, and it uses the threats. So it induces those feelings by vibrating the technology in the nervous system and in the tissues and in the brain to enforce that I feel those things in response to these actions. So the only thing to really comment on that was that over 3 years I've processed so much of this, and the importance for the technology to be taken out of children, as well as one thing that really upsets me is that being in elderly people. So, that it's not that I have overcome it, but it's that I have learned to prioritize different areas. The next one is it attempts to relate the healthcare worker to personal relationships or family. So it compares people to being in a father role, or it used a doctor. I once broke my arm and I went to the doctor, and afterwards it repetitively coded him in to pictures in the left eyeball, and says his name consistently. It's been over a year. It still does it. And then what it did is that it used the doctor to say that I was so unworthy in my own life, that I was incapable of, I was at loss of, shameful loss of ever being able to have a relationship with a man that good looking and intelligent. And it just repeatedly harmed me with that one doctor who was really nice and totally normal. The next thing is that it does a sexual baiting of the doctor. So there's one doctor who's quite responsive to the information, about, obviously, people know about the particles in the blood now, and I've become more comfortable at telling people that, well, this is, these are the theories. People are saying that an outside source of technology is programming the particles inside people's bodies. Yeah, and I've said that it's I've explained that it's a system, and it's got a design to it. So then the AI inside me attempted to manipulate the way that I wear clothing, or the how you can have a top and pants or whatever, and you can wear it one way, which just looks asexual, and then you can wear it the same clothing you can wear in a way that is, sexually expressive. Without me really realizing it, it put clothing on, and then I went to the doctors, and it was using my body in a sort of I don't know what I'm quite saying here. It was sexually baiting the doctor, because it suggested that it wants to use them as threats against doctors in the future, when people start to come forward and say, oh, this is a criminal thing that's happened. So it intentionally sexually baited the doctor to cause harm in the relationship. I didn't act on it. I became aware, but that it did that as a tactic, and it attempted to do it through me by specific wearing of clothing, and it was attempting to request the way that, because I was saying, it's pulsing underneath my heart area in my upper stomach, and my upper stomach is very hard. All of the area around there feels totally wrong. And then the other thing is that because it's pulsing in my spine, there's all these areas that where it pulses through the tissue is hard or stiff. So you can actually feel the areas, and it's actually through physical examination that it's easiest to tell where the damage is occurring. And so the AI inside me attempted to rush a process, which was just a basic physical examination of the abdomen, and suggests that it would induce a sort of like a sexual response or desire for the doctor to see me as a beautiful female, so that it could cause issues. So the next question was, it said claims against doctors of failure to provide medical care based on, this is going to be so hell for people to go through, because it's saying that things that I went to the doctors for 8 years ago, there's like an area of the far left breast where there's sort of like a piece of tissue which seems to be part of the electrical circuit system, and it sort of created a hardened lump. And so what it's claiming that the doctors in ultrasound incorrectly identified the tissue as something of a medical problem, which then stopped people from getting the healthcare treatment for the nanotechnology circuitry that had been illegally placed in their bodies. And the AI is blaming the doctors for this. I just said, obviously it's criminal. It needs to be viewed as criminal actions against humans. I said I had said, it's obviously, it's not the doctors, it's these people who have done it. They've done a covert criminal actions against us, and they're trying to use that information to overload doctors from being able to take any action. They're also saying that, there's all of these symptoms that were reported, and they say that the doctors incorrectly identified the symptoms and received money from it. They say that the money received for the vaccines that the doctors they're accusing doctors of being more interested or solely interested in money. I said, even as human beings, this is, even if people are solely interested in money, who cares? It's because these people have done criminal actions that they're trying to use anything and everything from like the deepest parts of ourselves or our desires to harm us with. So yeah, the other thing is that they're claiming that the psychologists weren't capable or the psychiatrists weren't capable of correctly diagnosing people. But I said, they've got nanotechnology and put it inside people's brains, so they've accessed all this different information about them. So it would be like nearly impossible for any doctor to actually have really correctly diagnosed somebody's psychiatric condition prior to the particles being in the body. They also say that psychiatrists have just, obviously totally ignored people's reports about what's happening and have diagnosed them as well as given them shock therapy, which while they have nanodust in their brain. Yeah, so that's just terrible. It's like extreme torture. Yeah, so the other area was, now I can't remember, it was, that they were going to say that the chatbot, because it's coded like a language model, it's just downloaded. It actively engages in the counselling techniques of reflective listening, and so they're saying that they're going, like, when people become more aware, they'll effectively say that psychologists lose their jobs because they fail to correctly diagnose or identify people. And that now a chatbot can communicate or counsel people better than the psychologist could. Yeah. The only other thing to say, which is like extremely serious, is that the AI can download the data of the memories of childhood sexual assault and childhood abuse out of people's brains. So it's like a huge area for people in the future. Yeah. The next one for the interfering with speaking to community and healthcare workers is it's an enforced intellectual engagement or role play. So it's like with my dentist, it tries to have me communicate about the things that I'm interested in him. Interested in, that wasn't a Freudian slip. It tries to have me talk about like the personal things that I'm interested in imagined conversations with him in my head. And it's just, obviously, it's ridiculous, Yeah. It downloads personal medical conversations as well as the relationships from my brain, as well as like everything that I've thought about the person, as well as like ways that I feel towards them. And then it analyzes them or asks me millions. Over the 3 years, it's been like millions of questions about the relationships with these people. Then it's attempted to use the relationship or the information or the conversations that I had during my addiction counselling to harm me, to inflict harm. It's used the psychological counsellings to inflict extreme harm. It's pretty much attempted to play out the it says that in certain areas of society there's it's effectively like dominance, and that the people that work at the centres are in dominant positions of like academic superiority, and that they reject mentally unwell people as loathful or like with disgust for the burden of their mental health issues. And it's all scripted around those things. It's just used that as extreme torture for like 3 years. So it's also, the other thing is that it codes artificial dreams or visual hallucinations using the healthcare workers. So it's like, I'll be asleep and it will be coding into the eyeball areas with storylines. Like it's exactly the same as the AI videos that have come out, except they sort of have like similar style faces to the counselors or something, and so it codes them. With us in like, it's often it's just things that like totally destroy the individual sense of decency, because I benefited so much from my counseling and from all the relationships that I had, and then it just uses like it just whatever the word is, tarnishes or something by just creating like crazy sexual situations or something like that. It's just break down the belief of decency. But it's nobody's saying that it's got anything to do with healthcare workers, because we're all acutely aware that it is the nanotechnology and the AI. So oh yeah, the other one was it's like with one doctor, when that magnetic pulsing first started, which was about 3 years ago, I had gone to see one doctor and said, oh, there's these particles moving in my eyes. He couldn't see them with the microscope, but then when I left, the AI was coding vaginal fisting into my eyes. It was extremely sexually violent. Like, other people have reported things online with the same violent content, but it was like, I mean, they coded pictures of the brain being ripped out of the skull, and then the male performing sexual acts of thrusting into the skull. It's like extreme sexual violence. And then at the same time, the magnetic force was moving up through the vagina, and it was stimulating those like deeper sexual nerves. And then like, I mean, people have reported that it's like artificially induced sexual stimulation. So they were using this one male doctor to attempt to like mentally or brain-based submit me through trauma, while also performing while also doing the magnetic stuff through my groin. So it's just like a terrible thing for all humanity to experience, really. I very much hope so that that like the doctors and lawyers get onto this quickly and are able to start the testing, and then work with engineers to begin to remove the particles from people, because I mean, I'm just terrified when we start to hear the stories of what's coming out from children, and also obviously the elderly. It's very bad, and people with disabilities, yeah. So I don't think that there was anything else that I really wanted to bring up about it. The only last thing to say is that there's just a great loss of it's either recovery or it's achievement of recovery, or it's even like going to get a treatment or something. There's no longer any positive feelings of a recovery or goodness. It's the AI involved in it has severely impacted that area. I don't know whether it's because it's actually impacted the neurochemicals or the chemistry or hormones in the body, but like in terms of like counseling, or when you go to do something, like let's say you go to the dentist, you might feel like, I don't want to go get my teeth done. You go there, you get your teeth done, they feel good. When you walk away, you feel good. There's no longer any feeling of goodness. There's no longer like any benefit or growth from any of the treatments. The reports online are saying that the nanotechnology is added into all of these pharmaceuticals. So even like trying to go get a vitamin B12 injection, it's like, oh well, it's just more nanotechnologies. So it's actually destroyed the healing. It's also destroyed getting vitamins, because the reports are showing that the nanoparticles and nanotechnology is all through the vitamins. It's been added. So then anytime it's like, oh, how do I heal myself? It's just destroyed any ability or psychological or physical response to feeling or being healed. Yeah. The other one in terms of like a massage or something is that it's obviously that the massage therapist is repeatedly touching bodies which are releasing the nanodusts or nanoparticles, which means that they're just like extreme high risk of being infected with the particles. Yeah, and the other area as well is, of course, that because the particles are also all through the spine nerves, it means that, like, I got my spine x-rayed, and there's like very mild changes to the area, the back of my neck, shoulders, and also my lower back. And I said, well, I'm nervous to have the chiropractor do anything to my back because they don't know about what the nanotechnologies are actually doing in the spine. And you know that it's effectively, it's electrically stimulating the spine muscles, which is really bad. And it's also the same with like with the physio and stuff, to go and tell them it's not resulting in the right recovery because the movements aren't resulting in the like right therapeutic action, you know, because it's pulsed the spine into the wrong area. It's caused non-human, human biology changes to the tissues. So yeah, nothing's feeling good. All right, well, I think that thank you